Not just a film guy, not just a football guy, but a former coach, now with Cleveland.com. He joins us every single, it's Tuesday, right?
It is Tuesday.
Tuesday at 6 p.m., Lance Reisland of Cleveland.com on the fan hotline, and, of course, the tailgate with Jonathan as well. Coach, welcome back to the show.
Hey, guys, what's going on? Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you. I've heard a fair amount of Browns fans maybe bemoan the running back production from Sunday. I kind of looked at that as offensive line woes when it came to the run game. What do you think is behind the run game struggles in Week 1?
Oh, absolutely. The power run game comes up front, right? And now you can't just put any back there, right? But what you can do, a guy like Nick Chubb, he's going to make that 7th, 8th guy miss in the hole. So you're not going to get those big explosive runs everybody gets. Now, he's a bigger guy. Junkins is a bigger guy, so I think he can obviously get you a 2nd and 6, which is, I think, very important. But the struggles in the run game came from the non-vertical displacement, unable to move these guys backward, and they had a lot of missed assignments on the second level. As I get through the film again, there's things that they're going to clean up at the second level, missing those linebackers after their doubles, things that just come with reps and live reps. So the running game will get better, but the running game starts up front, make no question about it.
I kind of made a joke about missing bigger Dewan Jones because he got skinny, and now all of a sudden, like if that's the Dewan Jones we're getting, skinny Dewan Jones, I need to get that man a few burgers because that was not good play here, Coach.
Well, part of his success with his size is that obviously his length helps him in pass protection. But in the run game, Dewan Jones has never been a killer. He's not a mauler. He's not a vertical displaced guy. He's a position guy, and he's going to have to learn to do some things differently because he's not as big. And it sounds kind of weird, but when you lose that weight, being in position doesn't always help you. He's going to have to learn some new things in the pass protection too, because a lot of times he'll get out there and just kind of get in the way, which he can do. Orlando Brown can do. These guys who are massive can do that. So he's going to have to learn, continue to get better. He's going to have to get a little bit meaner in the run game, especially with these double teams they're going to. And he's going to have to, really attack those defensive ends, especially on that wide zone. He struggled a little bit with that on Sunday. So
one of the big things that people have paid attention to is the Browns, who over the last couple previous years have not used hardly any motion. The Browns used a butt ton of motion on Sunday. I guess for the uninitiated, why does that matter? How does that help Joe Flacco?
Well, now they use motion. They used a lot of stack formations and use a lot of bunch formations. And what motion does, it creates a clear picture, right? Because motion is going to make that defense, it's kind of a trigger, right? So the minute you go in motion, the defense is going to, whatever their adjustment is, they're going to show it to you. And, if you think about a 3rd down conversion to Jerry Jeudy on the slant, that's because he motioned in and the defense had to bail. If you think about the touchdown to Tillman, that's because they had Jeudy and Njoku out to the left and the safety moved over, and Flacco knew with no safety, Tillman would be open in the middle. So not only are they using motion, but they're using bunches and stacks, and they're using a lot of different formations out of that 12 personnel that kind of dictates what they want to see. And that's kind of what Fannin is going to give these guys is with him and Njoku, they can create a picture that's pretty easy for a quarterback, to a guy like Joe Flacco to see. And, they motioned a ton, and every time they motion, you can see that defense kind of declare what they're doing.
I'm curious to know what you thought of the overall game plan, because we had talked before the show, before the game got underway on our show on Sunday, and you'd mentioned you wanted fewer passes from Flacco, but I feel like they almost split the baby because they threw a bunch, but it felt like they were doing what you had wanted in your descriptor before the game.
Yeah, what they did, I thought they did a really nice job. So one of the issues we have as coordinators is sometimes when the run game's not working, what is your answer? And especially if you're a ball control team, I thought they did a nice job with the screens, the swing passes, that we used to call them extended runs, right? So they're easy throws, they're not reads, they're just getting to the edge without having to block everybody until they get that run game going. I thought the game plan was excellent. It's not super exciting, but if it's going to get exciting, it has to start with that run game because that'll bring everybody down in the box, so safeties, they'll bring more linebackers in the game, regular personnel. Then you can take some shots over top. If you can't run the ball against the front four, then they're just going to play too high safeties. It's going to be tough to get those big chunk plays. So for the Browns in this scheme, they got to run the ball, and they got to, the bottom line is those guys inside have to move people against their will. And that's what the mentality's got to be moving forward.
Lance Reisland on the fan hotline here of Cleveland.com. Coach, as we call him, because he's a coach, and is a heck of a guy as well. I'm curious, just overall, How would you grade Joe Flacco's Week 1 performance?
I thought he played outstanding, and I thought, Joe wants to stretch the field, right? That's what he does. That's what he's always done. Let him cook, and I think he understands his ability to control that. Is how the Browns are going to win. And it's a fine line, though, because you're going to have to stretch some of these defenses vertically. But again, that goes back to the run game. So I thought he got rid of the ball very quick. I thought he did a great job of getting the ball out, throwing some really catchable balls. He does not get enough credit for me of throwing the ball to the receivers where they can run with it. Now, obviously, the throws on the interceptions, they weren't great. They could have been caught. Those are more fluky things. But I will tell you this, those type of plays, if you're playing at a high level, those usually balance themselves out throughout a game. The Browns are at such a fine margin of what they can do right or wrong that it kind of sticks out. But usually during the course of a game, those things equal out. So I thought he played great. I thought he was on time. I thought he got him into a bunch of really good runs against some really good looks, changing from one side to the other. So I thought he did a great job. Obviously the interceptions, you turn the ball over and you lost. And that's the bottom line. It's a product-based, league. But I thought he did a lot of things well. And they have some things that they can get, they can hang their hat on, I think.
Yeah, you were a quarterback in college. Take us through that mindset. I don't know if you ever had a game or anything like that where you just had to completely alter what you do best or how you attack a team based off of what the game plan had to be. But, like, how caged can they actually keep Joe Flacco? I would think eventually he's just going to want to go deep.
Well, I think what they have to do is that I think, once again, Joe Flacco's keeping everybody happy, right? That's a happy locker room. They're happy he's there, I think, right? So Batonio has mentioned that, marry the run with the pass. So I think Joe Flacco's happiness comes from the success of that offensive line, especially those interior three. Can they get double teams and can they move people so people have to crowd the line of scrimmage, which is going to allow him to take those shots? Until then, I think he's comfortable, especially being year 18. You care about winning. The bottom line is you win or you lose. And I think, obviously everybody's talked about development and things that they did well. And all those things are true, but you lost the football game. And what it comes down to is wins and losses. And for him, I think he understands the strength of their defense. They don't have a ton of explosive players, but you saw with Fan and Njoku, and if they can get the run game going, and Judy on some slants, and then get him deep, and Tillman if he continues to progress in the red zone. So they have some pieces that they can build on, but I think he's all about winning, and I think he knows if he turns the ball over, it's the only way another offense can completely – now, Ravens are going to have some success, but I don't think they're going to dominate the Browns defense. I just don't think that's going to happen unless the Browns offense does nothing and they get short fields and they're constantly on the field.
Coach, we can't talk about the defense. Mason Graham made his NFL debut. Some fans were left wanting. Carson Schlesinger had a great day. Dylan Sampson, Harold Fannin Jr., a lot of love for that, but it was a quiet day for Mason Graham. Does the tape match that?
People got to understand what he is. He's a guy that just makes it really tough to call plays. You got to make sure you account for him. And what he's got to do, I think, he's got to improve on his pass rush, right? Because they slid their center a bunch to Malik Collins. They try to chip with the back on Miles. So those guys opposite are going to get tons of one-on-ones, McGuire, Wright, and Mason. So I think he'll have to improve his pass rush. But in terms of run game and taking up blockers and keeping Schlesinger free and all those things that does not go in the stat sheet are things that he does very well. He occupies two blockers. He plays with a relentless motor. He does a really nice job of recreating the line of scrimmage. So him and Miles are the two guys that really move their guys back a yard. And when you move that guard back a yard, it's hard to create lanes in the running game. So obviously he's going to get better and better, but what he does is not something you're going to see on the stat sheet, and it's not something you're going to see unless you put it on the film. But I will tell you, he is as obviously Miles is a guy, but he, like the rest of the guy, he's really hard to block, and he's hard to block without two.
Was this just a great matchup for the Browns, or is it the type of thing that you'd tell me the 2023 defense is back and this is a chance to be one of the best in the NFL?
Oh no, I think it has a chance. Now you got to go out and play like the 23 team, but I think because they're better at defensive tackle, and they're better because of the scheme, right? And they're better because those guys match what Schwartz wants to do. And if you look at some of those sacks that you're seeing the Browns move up Schlesinger in that A gap a bunch, and what that does, that makes the offensive line account for him. So that center has to stay, and when that center has to stay, now you're creating one-on-one matchups for those outside guys and for the other defensive tackle. So yeah, you can see those guys moving those linemen linebackers are going to be on the line of scrimmage all year, and I think this is something they can. This is a staying power. This defense, the offense, the special teams, those are all things in question. I do not think this front seven, which is going to make that back four much better, is for real and legit and will be good each week.
All right, Coach. The kicker missed 2 kicks. How much patience should we have with him?
Here's the thing. All kickers are kind of the same, right? And it was funny. I heard somebody say, well, they got to do it in practice. And I will tell you that I've watched every practice for 4 years, and whoever's kicking, they never miss. So I don't know, Josh Cribbs was talking about, like, we used to do that where we'd have the whole team screaming and yelling. It's just really hard to simulate what they're getting in games, because if you base it on practice, every kicker they had has been outstanding. They make 50, 60-yarders consistently. I can count on my hand how many kicks have been missed. Obviously, it's between the ears, right? I mean, that's where these guys seem to be struggling. I don't know. I would say, I guess as a coach, I would say, what is his mentality? Is he fragile? If he's fragile, then he's got to go. If he's a guy that if he owns it and he moves forward and he seems confident, then maybe you give him another chance, because who knows what the next guy is going to do. You saw this guy kick. I think the leash is very short, but I think you got to go with him this week and then go from there. If you're in the ball game with the Ravens and you lose it because you're a kicker, then you got to move on.
I mean, I've heard Belichick describe certain, even just like random special teams plays with extraordinarily large detail. But as a whole, the profession just kind of says, well, kickers are just this mystery. Well, why is it that your profession, you guys as coaches, just kind of always ignore the kicking aspect of the game?
Well, it's funny because the kickers they're on their own terms, right? They're on the opposite field. They're with the holders and they're with the, long snapper, and they're just working on their own craft. So they're not in the meetings. They're not grinding. Some of those guys work out, but they're not grinding in the meeting room. They're not grinding on the practice field. You see them, they got their hat on, and a lot of them are great. It has nothing to do with who they are, but they're outcasts for what's going on between the lines, right? You don't really know who they are. You don't really see their progression. Like you can say, oh, Mason Graham's getting better with his hands or his footwork or anything like that. You just have no idea. And none of us have any idea, right? So I remember a kick would miss, and I'd be like, keep your head down. I have no idea what that meant, but that's what I would say, right? Make sure you stay on balance, right? None of us have any idea really what they're,
But you
really
guys all study so much of the game, and you guys are so obsessed with the game. It's funny that the collective coaching world just kind of, everyone just gives themselves a pass when it comes to kickers to not study it, know it, or even think about it.
Well, I would like to say that I'm different, but I agree. Now, we work on protection. We work on making sure you don't get punts blocked. But you just kind of take that for granted that's going to be, you can kick an extra point and you can kick a field goal inside 40 yards. And for me, especially at the NFL level, the more I watch film, it seems like if it's a wash, that's okay. So neither team gains an advantage. That's when special teams seem to be okay. The Browns are losing special teams, and you cannot do that with an offense. I mean, that costs them the game. And you're right. I would like to have a great answer for you there, but you're right. I rarely, our kickers were soccer players. They would come at the end of practice. I didn't make them put stuff on. They would kick the extra points, and then I'd say, see you Friday night, right? So it's like it's kind of all at the same thing, right? They're on their own field. They're doing their own thing. They come out when they want. They have their own practice schedule, et cetera, et cetera. I can guarantee you Stefanski really has no idea what the kickers are doing all practice. He has no idea. But he'll ask Bubba, and Bubba will tell him. But really, Bubba doesn't really know what's going on with those guys either. So it's really, and because they're so good in practice, it's hard to simulate the game. I don't know where they're at. I think you roll the dice. It's like a quarterback. You roll the dice, and you hope you get a guy who's confident and can kick.
So it sounds like Lance Reisland is saying kickers aren't real people. Coach, great stuff, buddy. Appreciate you.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me on.
Lance Reisland there again. Catch him on the Tailgate with JP. Catch him every single Tuesday here at 6 p.m. on 92.3 The Fan.